Today's show is sponsored by I-44 Equipment, quality used construction equipment you've been looking for. And Mid-Missouri Sandblasting, surface restoration for all your sandblasting needs. I've had this truck less than a week and I'm really enjoying it. Any truck owner that's got a hard top or a soft top will quickly find that items in the bed like to slide to the front. It's often hard to get all the way up there and grab those items as your arms aren't that long. There's always the idea you could carry a rake in your truck, but there's probably a better solution. After doing some research on Craigslist, I found some mini conveyors I could use for this project. These are mini conveyors, so I'm going to need to cut off the end of these tabs and weld them together to make a longer conveyor. Once I get done completing all of them, they're ready to be welded. Here I'm using my MIG welder to weld two conveyors together to fit the bed of my truck. Next, I'm going to cut a 10-foot piece of galvanized steel I bought to make a frame for those conveyors. With the day coming to a close, I went ahead and test fit everything before I welded it all together. The next morning I returned and started welding the conveyors to my frame. Once all the welding's done, the project's actually starting to take shape and look like something. I purchased a sheet of plywood as well as 3 2x4s at the hardware store. After measuring my plywood, I began making rails out of the 2x4s. To make things a little more interesting, I went ahead and glued this board upside down. I then came back and countersunk holes and then put my screws in. Once the first piece was on, I went ahead and then flipped the board so I can start putting the other 2 rails on. I use this Minwax can to give me a nice rounded shape for the front of my rails. After gluing and screwing these rails onto my plywood, it's time to go ahead and get this truck tray painted. I ran down to Lowe's and picked up this Rust-Oleum truck bed coating. I bought about 3 cans of it and it cost a little over $7 each. 3 cans was able to paint this whole thing without a problem. This was the first time I've ever used this Rust-Oleum product, and I do like it. It's got a non-skid feel to it, and it did dry very quickly. The manufacturer on the bottle actually recommends it be sprayed onto metal for truck beds, but it seemed to soak in the wood very well, so I think this product may last. To keep this truck tray sliding straight, I need some kind of track. My father-in-law gave this to me for free. It is a track that you would commonly see in a library where they slide the ladder back and forth. After making a cut in the angle iron, I'm now able to lay the track in there and weld it to the frame. With the frame finally complete, it's time to go ahead and start drilling the holes for the pieces that are going to hold the wheels. Once the holes are drilled into these pieces, it's time to go ahead and get the hardware mounted onto it. By not over tightening these nuts, it allows us to freely move up and down. Off camera, these later get bolted onto the underneath side of the truck tray about 4 inches from the top. After doing a little bit of measuring, I figured out where 2 places would be great to have 2 handles. To give me better tie downs, I went ahead and bought some screw-in eye hooks and then went ahead and hit everything with another coat of truck bed coating. The rollers on the conveyor do put off a little bit of noise when pulling it out and pushing it back in, but overall it's not too bad. I wanted to give you guys a good test. Yesterday we got groceries with it and it did exceptionally well, but I wanted to give it something a little bit tougher. We've got about 100 pounds of weight here and it didn't have a problem. For my next test, I wanted to get something out of the front of the truck without having to actually crawl into it. The tray itself is actually fairly light and it's really easy to take out and put back in. At the top, you'll notice I've added some rubber bumpers. That just kind of helps take up the gap and kind of soften the blow when I push it all the way in.